everyone. Welcome to the These Pills Kill virtual news conference to detail what is happening today with the FDA's expected actions, which we believe will be game-changing when it comes to chemical abortion pills. Right now, as Kaiser Health notes, chemical abortion pills are used to commit 54% of all abortions before 9 weeks. But that's sadly not enough for corporate abortion, which has now been pushing to deregulate these deadly drugs. And today, we may very well be confronting a brand new frontier of abortion. No test, online, chemical abortion distribution, in essence, death by mail delivered to your doorstep. My name is Kristen Hawkins. I'm the president of Students for Life Action and Students for Life of America. We are honored to serve more than 1,250 chapters in all 50 states, primarily millennials and Gen Z, the generations that have been targeted for abortions. Today, I'm honored to say that I'm joined by several pro-life leaders and experts who've been fighting alongside Students for Life to stop a coming crisis of deaths in homes across our nation. A lot has been written about the Dawes v. Jackson case, the case that has come before the Supreme Court challenging all abortion laws as we know it. And many believe that the decision that the Supreme Court hands down in June will likely mean more limits, even possibly pre-viability limits that will take place, banning abortions before a child can live outside of the womb. These may come at the heels of Mississippi's challenge to Roe, which is based on a law that was passed in Mississippi, which bans painful abortions that take place 15 weeks or later on preborn children. This is very, very exciting time for the pro-life movement right now, and very exciting change, something that we in the pro-life movement have been fighting for nearly 50 years. But sadly, today, more than 9 out of 10 abortions are taking place through 12 weeks of pregnancy. And so the fact is the majority of abortions are happening before 12 weeks. And many of these abortions, as I previously stated, are taking place using these drugs, chemical abortion pills. They're distributed and sold with health and safety standards. Currently, those are called REMS, which abortion vendors and the abortion lobby has been asking the FDA to get rid of, to make them entirely free of all of these REMS. And the FDA may actually do that today. This is according to what they've said in previous court documents. We are awaiting at any moment the FDA's decision on this. The continued politicization of chemical abortion pills, from Bill Clinton forcing them on the market back in 2000 to President Barack Obama reducing the health and safety standards in 2006 with the help of the currently nominated FDA commissioner, to today when President Joe Biden and his administration are pushing for complete deregulation of these dangerous pills that we already know results in deaths of children and sometimes their mothers, and can cause injury and infertility as well. This new market that is being pushed forward during, and it took place during the COVID crisis, it was being pushed forward by now current HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra, who oversees the FDA. During the COVID crisis, he was Attorney General of California and demanded that because of COVID, the risk of COVID, that women should be able to obtain these chemical abortion pills without ever seeing a doctor even confirming they were pregnant. What's ironic about the fact is that these pills, they risk women's lives, yet the abortion lobbies for so long declares that they are about saving women's lives in abortion. In fact, if you support abortion, and nobody on our call today here does, but if you do support abortions, you shouldn't want these chemical abortion pills to be released in the market without regulation anyway, because of the possibility of injury and infertility to women, and also the possibility that they can get into the hands of abusers, which there's been many stories published recently about this. So I want to get forward to this and get started introducing some of the guests who are on here today. We have a all-star lineup. First, we have physician and author Dr. Brent Boyles, who is the medical director of Heartbeat International's Abortion Pill Reversal Network. He's a practicing obstetrician and gynecologist with more than 25 years of experience. He has served as a pro-life expert witness in federal courts and joined Students for Life even in our docuseries we partnered with Heartbeat International on. It's called This is Chemical Abortion, produced along with our friend Charlotte Pence Bond, which details all the ways these chemical abortion pills kill and can also injure women. Author Marjorie Dannenfelser is also joining us today. She is the president of the Susan B. Anthony List, a political powerhouse. Under her leadership, SBA List and its super PAC, Women Speak Out, raised more than $61 million in the 2020 election cycle and contacted more than 8 million pro-life voters through door-to-door canvassing, voter mail, texting, digital communications. These efforts helped elect the largest incoming class of pro-life congresswomen in history, with 19 new pro-life women and 30 now pro-life women now total serving in the U.S. House of Representatives, more than double the previous record. That's astounding. Our last guest is attorney Catherine Glenn Foster, who's the president and CEO of Americans United for Life, which has been part of every abortion-related case before the Supreme Court since Roe versus Wade. AUL is a pioneer of the state-based model legislative strategy and is working to rebuild legal protections for life and defending them in court. She has litigated precedent, setting cases, and testified frequently. Over the last legislative session, so this spring, SBA List, AUL, and Students for Life are honored to work closely to develop a piece of model legislation at the state level, working to stop online distribution of chemical abortion pills. And these laws were actually signed in states like Montana and Oklahoma, Arizona, Indiana, Texas, and Arkansas. So Dr. Boyles, as a physician, and I know you've just stepped away from serving patients, so I want to speed this up for you. I want you to specifically tell us how these pills work and why women should be skeptical about the sales pitch that corporate abortion continues to make, that they're safe. You're on now. Yes.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you. The abortion pills work because there's a vital hormone that the woman's body produces from the very moment of conception called progesterone. And that hormone is critical for the success of the pregnancy. Mifepristone was developed as a progesterone blocker. So when it is administered, it binds to the progesterone receptors in the uterus and the ovary and shuts down the action of the progesterone that the pregnancy needs to survive. So the unborn child at that point is starved of nutrients and oxygen and fluids and usually dies from that. And then 2 days later, a medicine is given that induces what is essentially labor, uterine contractions that expel the pregnancy tissue. The complication rate from these is vastly underreported, and that's why women should be very skeptical about the marketing pitch. In the United States, there is no data set in existence that supports the assertions that the abortion industry has that abortion overall is safe, and particularly that medication abortion is safe. There is good data from Europe. International authors tend to be more unbiased in their writing about abortion, but American authors who write about the safety of abortion are virtually all abortionists, and virtually all are funded either by Danco, the company that makes mifepristone, or by other top international funders of abortion. So their conclusions are just radically wrong because they ignore the overwhelming data about the safety of abortion overall and the safety of medication abortion in particular. Before the FDA stopped keeping records, there were over 5,000 adverse event reports to the FDA from the first few years of medication abortion. And rather than act on them, they just stopped collecting them. So the Food and Drug Administration is ignoring women's safety. Your audience should do something right now that is hard for pro-life people to do. And let's for a moment, let's just not even think about the baby. We all know that abortion is wrong because it takes an innocent life each and every time it's done. But if you're truly an advocate for women's safety and women's health, then you should objectively and honestly look at the data and discuss the data. And if you don't, you're not an advocate for women. You're an advocate for abortion, but not an advocate for women. And that's what we're seeing when we see people making statements like medication abortion is safe by every measure, safer than Tylenol. That's a Cecile Richards quote. That the complication rate from medication abortion is overwhelmingly rare, and that's simply not the case. Unbiased international research, particularly out of the country of Finland, where medicine is socialized and records are kept meticulously, has gone in and looked at complications during any pregnancy, whether it was prenatal care and a delivery, a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy, or an abortion. And they look at complications, and they look at deaths, and they look at long-term treatment for other problems, future preterm labor, depression, all those sorts of things that we know are affected by abortion. They report in a series published more than 10 years ago. That's how long this data has been available and been ignored by the FDA and by the abortion industry in America. More than 10 years ago, they completed a study that looked at almost 50,000 women who underwent medication abortion under 7 weeks gestation. And 1 out of every 5 had an immediate adverse event. Wow. And nearly 1 in 20 had to have surgery to complete the abortion, even though it was being done at 7 weeks. But now we're talking about doing them here at 10 weeks. And when you look at the complications that happen after a medication abortion, an excellent review of the complication data that exists by the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs that was released about a year ago, looked at more than 5,000 adverse event reports. And the most clearly dangerous, life-threatening, and sometimes fatal complications include infection and hemorrhage, and also include trying to perform an abortion medically on somebody who actually has an ectopic pregnancy or a tubal pregnancy. Those are the 3 most common things likely to result in a serious problem or a potential fatality for the woman taking mifepristone. So the prior FDA requirement that an in-person evaluation be accomplished was designed to minimize those complications. You're at greater risk for infection and hemorrhage and needing surgery afterwards if you're farther along than you think. If you're outside of the range that which this has been approved, which in the United States currently is 10 weeks. We know from experience it's being given much farther along than that, in violation of current FDA regulation. Why is that? Because if you're farther along, the current dose of mifepristone may not be sufficient to completely empty the uterus. So you're at greater risk for hemorrhage, you're at greater risk for infection. Well, when you go to no test abortion or the in-person requirement is gone, then the person providing the abortion pill and delivering it, having it delivered to the patient, has no way of estimating the gestational age other than by the patient telling them when her last period was. So when you're going on menstrual history alone, it's notoriously inaccurate. The pro-abortion American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists admits that 50% of women are wrong on their due date when they go strictly on their period. So that means half of the women who are going to obtain a medication abortion by murder by mail are going to be wrong on their due date and are at greater risk for complications. The only way to know that a person has a tubal pregnancy or the pregnancy's inside the uterus is to either do an exam or an ultrasound, which can only be done in person. And the American College of OBGYN admits that 50% of women with an ectopic pregnancy do not have risk factors that you can identify during an interview. So of the ectopic pregnancies that are out there that don't know they have an ectopic and are seeking abortion services, half of them will get the medication and then later rupture their tube and potentially bleed to death internally. And the data that has been published and discussed by ACOG and by others in the abortion industry does nothing to legitimately address those issues. They simply say it's not an issue, but they don't discuss how it's not an issue. It is an issue. And we are going to see women hurt because of this. There is no doubt about that. No doubt in my mind at all. The FDA originally, they've already proven, I am 100% convinced that we're going to see a removal of the restrictions today, because they've already proven that they put ideology over women's safety. They did from the very beginning. They violated their own protocols in the approval of this medication. They knew it was going to be produced and sent to the United States by a Chinese pharmaceutical called Hualin, the name of the pharmaceutical company in China, that was already under discipline by the FDA for their faulty quality control standards. We weren't accepting other medications from Hualin at the time that we decided to accept mifepristone from Hualin. So they also require that for approval of a new medication, that there be a randomized placebo blinded trial to look at outcomes, efficacy, and safety. They skipped that requirement. All other medications require that, but not mifepristone. So it was approved in violation of the FDA's own standards because ideology was more important than women's safety. And that has continued to this day. They've ignored the fact that they once openly discussed how it was sufficiently dangerous to have a black box warning. The FDA approval had a black box warning that women should not be given medication abortion services if they did not have immediate access to emergency medical care for the complications that can occur. But now the abortion industry is telling us that, too many women live too far from medical centers to get good quality care, but they deserve to have an abortion. So let's go ahead and mail them their pills. And then when they have a complication, they'll be several hours away from the nearest medical center. It's mind-boggling.
And we don't have any national chemical or any national abortion reporting law at all. So how will we even be able to track the complications that come from the dangerous distribution of these drugs?
We don't. And the FDA has no desire to. In fact, they dropped their pretense at trying to look at complications a long time ago. They quit. They initially wanted complications and deaths reported, and then they dropped the requirement that complications be reported. Not that anyone was complying with it anyway. And now they will probably drop the requirement that deaths be reported. So they don't want to know, and they don't want the public to know.
And it's unbelievable because you can go to any pregnancy chat room that's out there on the internet. Our team started doing this during COVID, doctor, and we were going to these pregnancy chat rooms to identify women who are experiencing an unplanned crisis pregnancy and to offer them help. And we've, seen a lot of great results, meaning babies saved from this. But what we found that was an unintended thing was that we found women who were going to these pregnancy, the baby apps, and they were telling their stories about chemical abortions. And they were going into these centers, these chat rooms, essentially to warn the other women that if you want to have abortion, get a surgical abortion, avoid the chemical abortion. Let me tell you about this drug I took, and I thought it was going to be easier, and it was the most painful thing I've ever done in my life. It was unbelievable. We actually compiled a book, a little booklet we sent out to members of Congress. If you go to thisischemicalabortion.com, you can download it, but it's just 70 pages of all of the women who, some of them said that, they didn't regret their abortions. Some said that they were. This wasn't like a pro-life, pro-choice conversation. It was just women warning other women about how painful and dangerous these chemical abortions really are, which lines up with everything that you've just shared with us, which is just absolutely shocking. One last question before I turn over to Marjorie. And I want, since you're the medical director of the Abortion Pill Reversal Network, can you share with us why and how abortion pill reversal works? Because there has been a concerted campaign in the abortion industry's attempt to deregulate these dangerous drugs and to push out these chemical abortion pills. They want them everywhere, including college campuses. We've been fighting that. But there's been like Huffington Post pieces, other pieces that have been written discrediting the attempt to reverse a chemical abortion. They've taken down your ads on Google. Heartbeat International's ads on Google's for misinformation, but we know that's not true. It kind of perplexes me because the abortion industry has already gotten her money. If, once they sell her the pill, whether it's mailed to her or given to her in clinic, they've already gotten her money. I don't know why they're so insistent about trying to stop any information to be spread about how, in some cases, a chemical abortion pill can be reversed. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And the point you just raised is just very perplexing, but I think I have an answer to it. Why, if the abortion industry are really just neutral arbiters of choice and they want to respect and empower women, why don't they respect the choice for a woman to change her mind? Because they're worried about abortion advocacy, not about advocacy for women. And here's why that's the truth. I believe it was Daniel Grossman.
Of course it is
a writer, prominent abortionist and researcher and author, who was being interviewed by Slate magazine several years ago and was asked about this very issue. And he had a Freudian slip when and I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't remember the word for word quote, but he said, we don't want the public to have a perception that there actually is abortion regret. Because if it's publicly discussed that you can reverse the effects of a medication abortion, then it just simply follows that you need to do that because women do regret what they did and they change their mind. They don't want the public to know that occurs as often as it does. But Heartbeat gets 300 phone calls a month from women asking about reversal services. 300 calls a month, despite the fact that Google's throttling our ads. We're harder to find because of that, but we are still getting 300 calls a month. So women do change their minds. The other thing they don't want is pictures of healthy babies at term and smiling mamas who are happy that their reversal worked. They don't want those things circulating on social media because when they do, they go viral and they humanize the unborn child in a way that few other things do. I posted one picture of the first baby that I delivered after successfully reversing the patient's abortion myself. I posted that. That was 3 years ago. Within a week, it was shared more than 10,000 times. And that's just what my Facebook page notified me of. I don't know how many times it got shared on down the line from there. And commented on and reacted to. And the overwhelming majority of the comments and reactions were very positive. So they don't want the public to perceive that women actually regret it. And they don't want there to be the visual imagery of people who are happy that their reversal worked. Because the more the public awareness is raised, but you're right, they've already got their money. Why should they care? Because they care more about abortion advocacy than they do about advocacy for women and the woman's choice. How does reversal work? Real quickly, I don't want to take a lot more time. Mifepristone in itself is not a poison. It's not toxic, but its action to block the action of progesterone is what results in the death of the pregnancy. So the principles of basic science taught in medical school, physiology and pharmacology, talk about the reversal inhibition of different hormones in the body and how there are many ways to use those concepts therapeutically in all kinds of treatment for different endocrinological disorders and other medical disorders. So the basic sciences of physiology and pharmacology support the use of progesterone to overcome a progesterone blocker. Basic science supports it. The animal data supports it. A study out of Japan in the 1980s looked at pregnant rats, half of whom were given mifepristone and half were given mifepristone followed by progesterone. In the mifepristone group, only 30% of the rat embryos survived. In the progesterone group, 100% of the embryos survived. That's a huge difference. It's proof that it works. And then there's the human data. They like to criticize the methodology because they can't criticize the numbers. So they try to mislead. But the biggest study that evaluated the results of different attempts to reverse led us to the current protocol we use. That study tracked more than 500 patients. That's not just 3, 4, 5, or 6 patients. That's more than 500 patients. And what we call the high dose oral protocol group, which is what we now use for patients that wish to reverse who contact us at Heartbeat, 68% of the pregnancies survive if you use the high dose protocol group.
That's awesome. That's such great news. That's
And then there's
awesome news.
There's the human experience.
Mm.
There are the pictures. There are the women. I have a good number of women who have babies at home right now because they contacted Heartbeat and we prescribed for them. So we've been able to track that just in the last few years, more than 2,500 babies have survived their attempted abortion because we gave them progesterone.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
that number's
Well,
growing every day.
Thank you for all of this. This is fantastic information. I hope you can stay on for some of the Q&A that we might get in,
Yes.
because you are just a wealth of information. Marjorie, I don't know about you, but my blood was boiling when Dr. Bowles was talking about the risk factors to women, how the FDA has violated its own protocols, racing to get this drug approved, and now is getting rid of all, what we anticipate, all, common sense restrictions on this drug to not protect babies, but protect mothers from dying. Where can we go as pro-life activists right now? What do we need to be doing to engage on the federal and the state level to fight what we anticipate will be the FDA getting rid of all these REMS, despite all of the science Dr. Bowles just gave us and how harmful it is to women?
Well, you've been leading in that way, as is Catherine, and I'm so grateful to both of you on the federal and the state level. This is a point of great unity in the pro-life movement. And focused on what's happening before us at the Supreme Court and in this area as well. So I was very moved, Dr. Bowles, by the science and the data, and also your point that about what the abortion lobby wants and what they don't care about. It has been clear for so long that that they care so much. The abortion lobby is not a women's lobby. That used to be at least a seeming outgrowth of the women's liberation movement long ago, when they talked about it being safe, legal, and rare. Like, obviously don't care about it being safe. They definitely don't care about it being rare, because if it's a human right, as they see it, why should it be rare? And what they really care is that it remains legal. So they care about the institution of abortion more than the women that are getting it. In fact, the women are so dimly lit in the room of their choices that they can't even see the women anymore. So much so that the lies are just breathtaking. You gave so much great information that there's a couple of things that I was going to say, and I'm only going to add a little bit more, but the lies seem to me the death throes of a dying cause. They see the Supreme Court looking at Dobbs, perhaps in June or July, we may see Roe overturned or sharply curtailed, allowing the states to act to protect unborn children and surround the mothers with love. They see this happening. They're willing to first tell through their outlets all over the country, receive these pills from out of the country, communicate to them that you need to stockpile these pills just in case for the future. Whenever you might need them, we're going to make sure that they're available to you. They're willing to clearly circumvent future laws. They talk about how they're going to circumvent the law if states start to be ambitious in protecting unborn children. So the deceit and the deception, because of the commitment to the institution of abortion, to the great detriment of the mental and physical health of women, means that they can never pretend to be a part of the women's movement, that they never were in the beginning. I know that everybody listening here has probably heard the story, but in case you haven't, and that the NARAL was partly begun by one of the most prolific abortionists in the world, Bernard Nathanson, many years ago, who has recently died. And the founding of NARAL was based on lies that they about how many women were dying in back alley abortions, and that lie moving into the future, deeply embedded in the DNA of the abortion movement, has harmed women so profoundly that the lies just continue, because it's the ends justifies the means for them. Women really can't be trusted with the truth, because they can't really be trusted to make decisions for them and their unborn children within the context of their communities and their loved ones, because we know better what's best for them. We know that abortion being legal is more important than the few that will be hurt, perhaps irreparably harmed in more than one way, who go to an emergency room, perhaps, or worse, don't make it through. So there ought to be just unbelievable outrage on the part of women that they're being lied to. The problem is so many don't know that. So when you ask where we go, I think you know very well that as we move into a post-Roe era, and these pills are continuing to get trafficked through states where abortion isn't allowed even at that stage, our work with governors and with federal elected officials is going to be more and more important. In fact, the most important. So much of our work has been theoretical up to this point, and now it's real. Now the passing of these laws all over the country, potentially with the leadership of great governors, and then possibly passing something, being as ambitious as we can be on the federal level, means that we have to have the presidency, we have to have the US Senate, and most importantly, we have to have governorships all over the country. It would be very easy for our movement to be buried after Roe is overturned because of the fear and fear that is induced by a great backlash from the other side. So that is a lot of the work that we do at Susan B. Anthony List, and it's working hand in hand with you guys doing the legislation on the ground in 7 states already. In Arizona, Arkansas, Indiana, Montana, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Texas have already enacted safeguards in their states of varying degrees that is trying to make up for the REMs that are being potentially overturned. So more of that, of course, is what we need. And then there are 7 other states that are considering action for the next session. The thing I'm going to close on is something I don't know if Dr. Bowles you've seen yet, but just in the last few days we released through our research arm, the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and it is the first of its kind study using Medicaid data in states that allow a Medicaid to pay for abortions, and it found that the rate of ER visits following chemical abortions has increased more than 500%, growing much faster for chemical abortions than for surgical abortions. So the keeping of this information from women is malpractice if you call yourself a women's advocate. And I hope that as we move into the elections especially, and move into this next year where we may see a springtime for life, that we have a greater platform to be able to communicate the truth to women, because abortion will be a top level issue in the public discourse, and we'll be able to do that. And as we do that, we'll inspire governors and senators, legislators all over the country to be actually not looking at the best for women and their children, and therefore dismantling the abortion industry's lies and also their very institutions.
Marjorie, you were right on there. I mean, I think a lot of folks think that, a reversal of Roe versus Wade means our job in the pro-life movement is done, but it's simply not. It's actually the very beginning of a new phase where it'll be a 50-state battle. And you're very right on about we're going to have to ensure that we win the presidency, that we we win back the majority in the U.S. Senate, state governor races, and also state legislative races matter because this decision is going to come back to the states, and that's going to be where we're going to be fighting. And you're right, the abortion lobby is going to use the fear of Roe versus Wade being reversed. We've heard this over and over again on campuses where, students will say that they support Roe, and then we'll ask them if they actually know what Roe versus Wade is, and they have no clue. And once they know Roe, they don't like Roe. And so, they don't understand just how extreme the Roe versus Wade is, our abortion laws are in our country. And then when they find out about chemical abortion and the gruesomeness of chemical abortion, the fact that girls are sitting in dormitories, shared bathrooms, aborting children into the public sewer system, even students who claim to be pro-choice in favor of the right to have an abortion do not like that information. It's actually very easy to persuade them to come on our side on this issue. Catherine, I want to bring you into this conversation. At AUL, American United for Life, you all have been tracking every abortion law since Roe versus Wade was first handed down. Talking about, Marjorie mentioned again the work that we've been doing in coalition in states to pass laws to ban the online distribution of these dangerous chemical abortion pills. I believe we are all predicting a kind of a flood of new laws being introduced this new spring legislative session, which will begin in January in the new year. For any state legislators who are tuning in today or watching the replay, what do they need to know? What is important for them when they're crafting pro-life laws in their states?
Yeah, and really this goes back even to the Dobbs case. This case is monumental, and we all know this. And I know it's been a decades-long effort by each of us on this call, and I'm so grateful to each of you and to so many of the strong pro-life advocates who were listening to this conversation. But I do think that it took many of us by surprise when the Supreme Court announced that they were going to consider this case, because so many cases come up before the court. And even though they hear a case on abortion every couple of years, on average one every 2.5 years, they only consider a fraction of cases overall, and even don't hear most abortion cases. Now, states protect life at different stages, some earlier like Texas and some later at 21 weeks. And so why is the Supreme Court considering the issue of 15 weeks in particular? Only the justices know. What we do know is that the Supreme Court could use this case to end Roe and end abortion culture as we know it. And then once that so-called constitutional right to abortion is no more, protecting women, mothers, and their children from chemical abortion becomes a whole lot simpler, because we, the pro-life movement, we are also pro-woman. We are about the people, not just base activism or mindless advocacy. And we celebrate those stories of hope and those photos of the happy moms and babies who are here thanks to the life-saving efforts of abortion pill reversal, and thanks to the efforts of Heartbeat International and courageous lawmakers and advocates and neighbors who stand alongside women in need. And you know what else? We are honest about the truth of abortion, even the abortion regret that so many women feel, like myself. And so we need the courts to reject the logic of abortion. That's that first major issue. And then once the logic of killing is rejected, then the alternative logic of protecting life becomes easier to move forward. So protections from chemical abortion, from pills by mail, from so-called telemedicine abortion, it is vitally important, because Planned Parenthood and other abortion businesses would love to be able to make money by prescribing these pills and shielding themselves from any responsibility to the women that they claim are their patients. Now, pro-life laws on chemical abortion can and will survive challenges against them. But what we really need is a culture change in the states where no pro-life protective laws are possible right now. California, New York, Illinois, just three major examples, states where state lawmakers are so radical, so hostile to the pro-life message that we will need to adapt. Now, condemning them and calling them radicals is not going to change their hearts, even though a lot of those lawmakers, let's face it, are radicals. But we all need to be thoughtful about how to engage and change those dynamics in states that are hostile to human life when Roe falls, and particularly on the issue of chemical abortion. So what can a pro-life lawmaker do? First off, we must trust women with the truth. So when we're crafting pro-life laws that protect women and children from the threat of chemical abortion, first, about 18 months ago, we had a group of pro-life national organizations come together to draft comprehensive legislation addressing the increasing problems with chemical abortion drugs. Now, what we found is that many of the states that passed good laws on things like informed consent and reporting public health data, they did that about 10, 15 years ago when chemical abortion pills were not commonly used. Now, especially post-COVID, or in this COVID era, around 50% of abortions in the US are being done using these pills. And so states need to account for this difference, passing laws that are going to separate out the data to show how many complications are happening with these pills. In Arkansas, for example, they passed a law like this. And in that first year of data, we found that 88% of all abortion complications in that state were from these drugs. We also need to make sure that a woman understands that this is a serious drug and that she can suffer life-changing complications and that she needs to have a follow-up appointment, and that abortion pill reversal is possible. This is not the same as taking a Tylenol. We also need to require doctors to do proper screening to make sure that she's even a candidate for these drugs. Does she have an IUD? Is she within the gestational age limit? Does she have an ectopic pregnancy? All of these questions that must be asked and really investigated. We also need to make sure that the woman taking these drugs is doing so voluntarily without any kind of coercion or abuse from a parent or a partner or a trafficker, and that she is the person taking these drugs, that they're not being obtained for someone else. Now, here's the good news. In 2021, as we've shared, several states updated their abortion laws to address these concerns in various ways: Arkansas, Indiana, Louisiana, Montana, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Texas, West Virginia, state after state. And by next summer, close to a third of all states may have enacted strong protections for women and children. Now, we have a lot of good work ahead of us. All of us do, as allies and partners in the cause for life. Roe v. Wade looks set to be reversed in June. That's my hope. But the fight is going to continue until either our Constitution is rightly understood to protect all human life from abortion as a simple matter of justice, or until every state does so in its state law. And I am just so excited to continue carrying the banner forward for human life alongside each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for all the excellent work you're doing. We're definitely looking forward to continuing partnering with AUL and SBA lists as we move state to state. I know the pro-life gen, the post-Roe generation is ready to go and to get to state capitals across the country. I guess I have a question for all of you today. On a scale of 1 to 10, how significant is today's change that the FDA, that we believe they're going to be proposing to get rid of all of the common sense REMS, these safety regulations on chemical abortions? How significant is that right now?
I mean, I would give it an 11. The change and what it does to our culture, it changes the debate from the sidewalk to the lonely bathroom, where a woman who is unsafe and unhappy and miserable is self-aborting. So that change means that we're less engaged in the public arena because it's secret, it's behind closed doors. She doesn't get the information, as Catherine was pointing out, that she needs. She's being counseled, if she does go to an ER afterwards, to say that she had a miscarriage. And so they don't even have the information to support her in the way that she should be supported, because of they're so afraid of communicating adverse events that they're willing to endanger her again because of that. Just for the health of the woman and the life of the child, it could not be worse. And this is such a top priority that it should, within the context of where we're headed next year, we hope, it should be a very, very top priority for the entire pro-life.
I would also put it at an 11. It's funny for a movement, the pro-abortion movement, that claimed to be about, with the tagline, "Shout your abortion," where they wanted everyone to talk about their abortion stories. It's really interesting to see how often they want to sweep abortion under the rug and not have an open, honest conversation and shut down stories of abortion regret. They do not want the truth about abortion to get out there. And they do not want the truth about chemical abortion to get out there. And when I'm putting it in 11, I'm especially thinking, I mean, absolutely, it creates a culture change. It creates a culture that devalues life and subjects women to coercion and abuse beyond even what we've seen thus far. But I'm also thinking about that individual woman, not just the culture, but each individual woman who's making that decision, who's all of a sudden under so much more pressure, and all of a sudden doesn't have those same protections in place. And what is her life going to look like going forward? For her, it is an 11 out of a 10 change, because every single one of these abortions is life-changing.
I guess there's so many things discussed. I know our time is limited. It's unbelievable what's going to happen today. I guess Dr. Boyles, maybe Dr. Boyle, you could help us, because I get this question a lot at, churches and with Christian believers, folks who don't actually know what chemical abortion is, which is why you can go to thisIsChemicalAbortion.com and watch docuseries. But can you quickly explain how chemical abortion pills are not birth control pills?
Birth control pills, by definition, will prevent. That is the goal of being on a birth control pill. It doesn't always work, but it greatly, when taken correctly, greatly reduces the chances of an unplanned pregnancy. Abortion pills get rid of the pregnancy once it's established. It doesn't prevent anything. That's the definition of the word contraception, which is prevention of conception. Abortion pills are not contraceptive. They don't prevent pregnancy. They prevent live birth. So they're very different, very, very different.
What about Plan B and chemical abortion pills?
They're also not the same thing. The goal of Plan B, or what you may call emergency contraception or the morning after pill, is that if an act of intercourse occurs and protection wasn't used, or there was no birth control and it was just done spontaneously, then the theory is that if you take that within 3 days, you get a 3/4 reduction in your risk of conceiving. The reason I don't advise Plan B is that if a conception has already occurred by the time you take it, it may interfere with the implantation of that zygote rather than prevent the zygote from being created. So I don't.
And if you Google zygote, what does Google tell you a zygote is?
It's a tiny human being.
Thank you.
Those are just terms: zygote, embryo, fetus, newborn, infant, toddler, adolescent, teenager, God help us all.
Not viable.
I raised 4. So, adult, middle age, baby boomer, centenarian, whatever term you use, those are not descriptions of your humanity. They are identifying descriptors of where you are on the spectrum of human life. I'd like for your listeners to go to lifenews.com, and in their search bar, just type the number 41. It will produce an article for you that gives you 41 scientific references and quotes from preeminent scientific minds, not pro-life people, just scientists who all say that human life begins at conception. So when you hear an abortionist like Dr. Jen Gunter say things like, a seed is not a tree, just like a baby's not a fetus is not a human. She tweeted that recently. This is so completely ridiculous and unscientific, because she went to medical school. Every textbook that teaches embryology in medical school, in chapter 1 usually, says human life begins at conception.
Unbelievable. Marjorie,
I'll challenge your listeners to, if anyone can find an embryology textbook that doesn't say that somewhere in it, the first one who can get me a reference, I'll send you a $100 Apple gift card. Such a thing does not exist.
You're a born teacher.
I love it. You can tell he talks to college students. Apple gift card. Then my kids would love that. Marjorie, and I guess also Catherine, what are your all's thoughts? A question came in. What can we do to codify these REMs at a federal level? I know Congressman Bob Good has his new HR 5136, the Tele-Abortion Prevention Act. I just recently spoke with him. We're going to be posting a video with he and I right after this webcast talking about that. But what can we do? Is there anything we can do federally? Like when there's the red wave in 2022 and Republicans control the House and the Senate again?
Well, I think the biggest problem we have is filibuster. That I think that there's going to be quite a tectonic plate shift after Roe versus Wade is overturned. And we may see Democrats perhaps coming our way a little bit, like not immediately, not before the next presidential maybe, but I do think that that's going to happen because now it's not theoretical. Now this is real. So codifying the RIMS requires having 2/3 of the U.S. Senate, which would take a miracle, which happens a lot. But it would take a miracle for us to have 2/3 in the Senate, given the current political climate. So it would take that. That is why we're working so closely together to do this on the state level in every single place that can. There are about 30 states that would and could do this and be very ambitious on life. And they could also basically put in their own codes what the protections are that we want to have on the federal level.
Catherine, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We are working very hard on the state level to make sure that is every state that is open to this and is willing to pass such a law and pass these protections is doing so. And that's why we formed this coalition, right, to get the best possible data, the best possible model bill put into place so that states could have that available as a resource to them. When it comes to the federal level, that is exactly what our lawmakers should be doing. This should be a bipartisan, universal issue, the way so many of these issues used to be, when we're talking about protecting human rights and protecting women and making sure that women aren't at risk for this, dramatically increased risk of hemorrhage and of sepsis and of life-threatening infection. This is an issue that every lawmaker should be on the same page about. But just like at the Supreme Court, when it comes to abortion, sometimes things change. Justice Thomas in particular has written really powerfully on that issue, talking about how, when a plaintiff is Planned Parenthood, when we're talking about abortion, suddenly everything goes up in the air and all of a sudden some battle lines get drawn that shouldn't have been there and wouldn't have been there if it weren't abortion. So I hope that our federal lawmakers can put that issue to the side, the fact that we're talking about abortion and they've decided to make it political when it shouldn't be. I hope that they can focus on human rights and on women's rights and on protecting women and children, and maybe listen a little bit less to their pocketbooks and a little bit more to their hearts and their consciences. And if they can do that, then this should be an easy win at the federal level. But until then, we're looking to the states.
You said everything so politely. It was so nice. Something Dr. Boyle said at the beginning of his presentation about, and in fact, I say it a lot when I'm on campuses giving speeches, because I get asked, why are you citing data from Finland? Why are you citing data from non-American countries? And it's really because there really isn't good data. And Marjorie, I was so excited to hear about the Charlotte Lozier Institute's new study, because we need good data on abortion. You would think it would be a nonpartisan thing here in America. Marjorie, do you think that the issues that we already know women and these risks factors to chemical abortion, now with the FDA drop, presumably they're going to drop all these common sense REMS. Do you think that makes the case for why we need to push for a national abortion reporting law of some kind?
Yeah. I mean, I know that Dr. Bowles, you referred to this as well, or maybe it was you, Kristen. Yeah, I mean, that has been, it is tough. It's a tough lift. And I think it's because it seems like it's in the weeds, but it's not at all. It's information that we have to know that we can reveal and convey to legislators and women also. The national border, the requirement that these adverse events be and also just all abortion statistics be reported is so fundamental, so elemental in how you come up with healthcare policy, that you don't know the area within which you legislate, and then you just go and read about it later. It makes no sense. I just wanted to mention real quickly that if anybody wants this study that's listening, it's available, and it is based on what you said before, that it was required, these adverse events, it was required that they be reported until 2019. And then now they're not being reported at all. but from 2000 to 2019, over 3,800 adverse events were reported to the FDA, with 20 deaths and more than 500 life-threatening complications. Now we know that, and we know that think about that and how bad it's going to be if these pills are distributed in the numbers that the abortion movement has promised, and what that's going to look like in ERs all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that insight, because I think you're right. This will be a very heavy lift, but it should not be. It should be very common sense. I want to give everybody a couple of, we got to give everyone shout outs here of where you can go for more information. I know if you're a member of the media and you want to interview Dr. Bowles or Marjorie or Catherine, you can go to just email media@studentsforlife.org. I know you can go to thisischemicalabortion.com, watch the docuseries that we put together with Heartbeat International, Students for Life Action, Charlotte Pence Bond. You can also email your members of Congress right from that site. You can download that free booklet we put together of just women's unfiltered, raw testimonials that they're posting in pregnancy chat rooms across the internet about how dangerous and painful chemical abortions are. Charlotte Lozier, we've got to get everyone going to your all's website. Marjorie, what are the websites you want to direct everyone to?
I think that's the one. There's so much information on there. The Charlotte Lozier Institute. That would be great. If
All right. Is it charlottelozierInstitute.org?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Just Google Charlotte Lozier Institute. It'll pop right up.
And Google hasn't banned you yet, so you're good.
Not yet. Yeah.
Catherine, how can folks get in touch with you?
Our website is aul.org, and you can go there to find all of our information, our research, our legal briefs, our Defending Life book, where we track every life-related law from fertilization to all the way to the grave in all 50 states. We rank all the states. We have suggestions for what they can do next. We talk about what's going to happen in each state once Roe v. Wade is overturned finally. You will also find there Unsafe, our resource that goes behind the doors of these abortion facilities and gets to the truth of what's really going on. So all of these resources are right there at aul.org.
And Unsafe is a great report. I quote it almost every campus speech I give. Dr. Bowles, I assume everyone needs to know about abortionpillreversal.com. Are there any other sites you'd like to refer folks to who tuned in today?
Sure. First, I'd like to reiterate that the other two ladies that are on here, their sites, the Charlotte Lozier Institute and Americans United for Life, are both excellent. The recent report that AUL put out called Unsafe, everybody should get, especially if they have an interest in legislative advocacy. So you can look at what the different state-by-state situations are. It's an incredibly well done piece of information. And so is the report that Marjorie just talked about from the Charlotte Lozier Institute that came out. I've seen some preliminary stuff about that, and it's also very, very nicely done. Remember the address, www.abortionpillreversal.com. If you're a sidewalk advocate, get some cheap business card templates at Office Depot and print that on them, and then print the 877, the toll-free number that's answered 24 hours a day. Give those to people who are walking out of abortion clinics with a little brown bag in their hand, because that will make it easier for them to find that resource. And then if you're looking for other information about Heartbeat International, which is the world's largest association of pregnancy help centers that were around the world, APR, phone calls from more than 40 countries in the last year, reversal services. But so abortionpillreversal.com and then heartbeatinternational.org. And if anyone wants to contact me, you'll be able to find a number through which a message can be given to me if you're interested in questions or things like that that I may be able to help with.
Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Bowles. And thank you, Marjorie and Catherine, for joining us. It's been a real honor to partner with you all on this. And I know this is going to be a long fight. And there's going to be a lot more that we're going to be asking you, everyone who's tuning in, to do in the coming weeks and months when it comes to chemical abortion. I'm being told I have to remind you to go to studentsforlifeaction.org, our website, Students for Life Action. We'll be posting a blog there in the next few moments, recapping this webcast where you can get the link. And also we'll be talking about the federal legislation, U.S. Representative Bob Good's bill, Telemedicine Abortion Prevention Act of 2021. Thank you all for tuning in today to this very important press conference webcast discussion about the FDA's pending decision on chemical abortion regulations and how these pills are going to be used to not only kill more babies, but harm women. These pills kill. Thank you.